let's start with the running back news with Kamara and with Fournette. I guess we'll just start with Fournette and your reaction to him ending up in Tampa and what that means for the division.
It makes it complicated. And now, listen, I still think the Saints are a cut above in that division. But when you add a guy like Leonard to the lineup, that certainly helps Tampa's chances because he's a special back. And the one knock on him had always been, he's not a real good receiver coming out of the backfield. Look what he did last year.
Yep, you're right.
He caught the ball. And we talked about this,
you did.
I think, a little over a month ago.
About a month ago, you made me go look up the stats, and he had over 70 catches.
And so he fits. This guy brought to mind, I was talking to Rick Venturi, and he kind of sort of reminded me of this, sort of late after Jim Moore got fired and Venturi took over. He put Bruce Arians as his offensive coordinator. Bruce was the tight ends coach of the Saints at that time. And Rick had no idea what Arians was doing. Man, he was calling tight end screens, flea flickers, all kind of stuff. Venturi, he was just trying to hold the ship in the water where it could sail. But Arians had other ideas. And I remember this was real late in the season. I got a chance to talk to both of them. And Bruce made the comment to me, where you think the old man's going to go with this, meaning Tom Benson. And I said, the two things he's always sort of kind of put his hands on is, one, he wants a guy with experience, and two, he likes the name on a marquee. And Bruce made the comment, looking at the game today, he said, it's totally changed. He said, I just hope, he said, Mr. Benson will go out and get a coach that will put so much emphasis on throwing the football, getting the ball downfield, getting your backs and the tight ends involved. And he said, Coach Moore did a great job here in what he did, and they were a run-oriented team, and Eric was great in that short, middle-range area of the field, but we never really had a guy that could really stretch the deep part of the field. He said, we picked players, but none of them really turned out to be that type of guy. And he said, I just hope he, in understanding that this game is starting to change, that he doesn't pick an older coach, that he goes with a guy that understands the pitch and catch game, because he said, I think that's the thing that's going to kind of cultivate this league. But he ended it with this, but he said, you always need a hammer. I said, what do you mean? He said, no, you need a guy that'll finish a game, that can start a game and finish a game. You need a hammer running back. And I first started getting calls because I do a couple shows out in Tampa, and I got a call or two about, hey, can you do tomorrow on Leonard Fournette? And I was like, what's going on? He said, hey, it's not confirmed yet, but a lot of people think that Arians is really pushing for Leonard Fournette. It popped in my head. Bang. The hammer. And what he had talked about. Now, this is after Moore is fired mid-season. This is real late. This is, I think, right after the second to last game of the season. Arians is talking about this, and that he wanted that hammer. I look on the Buccaneers roster. Okay, Ronald Jones. He's not what I would call a hammer.
Right.
He's a potential player, and he's a pretty good back coming out of the backfield, but he is more of a speed, quickness back. God bless him, Shady, man, he was a great player in Philadelphia, just tremendous. But he's at the trail end of that career in the National Football League. He's in his winter years as a player. He got the hammer in Fournette. And, man, listen, Fournette, everything's in front of him now. He's not playing on a Jacksonville team that he'll see 8-man fronts. You might go after Brady a little bit, but, boy, you better pick it wisely if you go after him. Because with that group of receivers he's got in tight ends, you better be real careful. And now it gives Fournette that opportunity to really explode in that offense. It may be a game or two into the season before we see all that, but it popped in my mind, and then I talked to Rick about it. He said, Mike, I do remember that. Mm-hmm. I remember that conversation. And he said, but you know what? I got to give you credit. He said, yeah, you're part of the media, and I hate to do it, but he said, I'm part of the media now, too. You were right. He said he looked for the experienced coach. He hired Mike Ditka over Lou Holtz, and he liked the name on the marquee. He liked Mike's name on that marquee. And so that's not what Mike wanted to do here. Mike wanted to run the football.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how those comments that he made many, many years ago has now come to fruition out in Tampa. And it's win now. It looks like a poker game now. They're just, like the Saints, they're just throwing all the chips in to make this run at it. And it was funny, I was doing a show this morning out in Tampa, and, talking about, man, those two games the Saints will play against the Bucs. And my thing is, hey, hold on now. It may be a third. We may see this team in January for the third time. So it's interesting how the buildup is. I think early on, like in anything else that's new, and even if you're putting together an organization or a company, there's going to be a few missteps, and it'll take a little while to get that all together because you haven't played in any games. There's a lot of new players on that team offensively. You got a solid defensive team, really solid. And Todd Bowles, I think, does a really good job as a defensive coordinator there. If Devin can stay healthy, that's a big key to them.
Yeah.
You want to play them in November and December?
No.
When all that's going to kind of sort of maybe piece together, they're going to be a tough out, and you may see that game 3.
Okay, Mike, from Fournette, let's look closer to home here with Alvin Kamara. It was a whirlwind 4 days or so. What happened throughout that, Mike, as you see it, and where do we sit now with the whole situation?
Well, one, Matt, I was kind of on Gilligan's Island around draft time because I told you and everybody else, I thought that they would get a deal done long-term with Alvin before the season started. I thought the key was the Derrick Henry deal, which hadn't been in place yet. And I still feel that way. I really feel that is the framework of a deal for Kamara. I think he will get north of what Derrick Henry got. But I think some are missing the boat here on this deal. And I'm sort of repeating myself of what I said before. Even with Derrick, it was a 4-year, $50 million contract, 12 of it, so it's 12.5 per year. You can easily figure that one out. But the key was he got $25.5 million guaranteed. And I thought that was the key for John Robinson getting that deal done with Derrick Henry, was that more than half of it is guaranteed to Henry. Here's the catch. The back years of that contract for Todd Gurley with the Rams, where is it at today?
0?
0. Where's the back end of that contract with Devontae Freeman with the Falcons?
I would guess 0, but I'm not sure.
So, okay, and look what's happening with the Jets, which I have no idea what they're doing from day to day. And I don't see how they get this great press nationally that, oh, man, this Jets football team is so well run. By who? I would like for them to explain me that. I'm just lost with it all as far as Jets are concerned. But do you really think Le'Veon Bell is going to stay? My feeling is I don't know that he stays this year, that they don't try to move him. And you're going to trade for that contract, but you know what's going to happen. They're going to try to renegotiate parts of that. Same way I think the Texans are going to try to do it with David Johnson in some manner to move money away. Even if his contract is a bigger deal, which I have no doubt it will be, a bigger contract than Henry's contract, and I think it'll get $13 million. The key to that is the guaranteed money, because you might not get that money on the back end of that deal. That's just the way some of this has happened in the NFL today, and we've seen a number of big-time backs who sign these contracts don't ever see the final years of it. So if I'm Kamara's agent, I might ask for this big contract. But if I'm Alvin, my thing is, hey, wait a minute. What's my guarantee of this? That's what got the Derrick Henry deal done. 25.5 of the 50 guaranteed that he's going to get, no matter what. And so I think that's a big key now. I'll bet you dollars to donuts. It's much more about the guarantee than the length of that contract financially. Because you might, if you Kamara, you may never see those numbers at the back end of that deal.
Mm-hmm.
And now you got Ramczyk, Lattimore, Anzalone, Demario Davis. You got a litany, Marcus Williams. You got a litany of guys. And Mickey and Kai Harley have done a great job. And listen, Kai Harley, man behind the scenes, you talk about a dude that knows how to finagle numbers around. He does it. and Kai can do it. And Mickey has always told us in shows that and when he builds a contract, and Kai's part of that he always has some wiggle room in there to convert money around, to maneuver money around. We've seen it. They've done it every year, that they've been able to free up money to get free agents. That comes to a point where, all these big contracts are going to come to the forefront. And so if I'm Alvin, my thing is, man, give me that big contract, but I want to see that guaranteed money, because I may not see that in year 4. I may never see that contract in year 4. So that's the part, and I stay with what I've said back before the draft. I think the Saints will get a deal done with Alvin before the season starts. My clock is ticking, and it's getting a little louder. but we're working at it. And secondly, I think I'm right that the framework of that, even though he'll get more than Henry, is really the Derrick Henry contract and the guaranteed money Derrick got out of it, because that was the push between Henry's agent and John Robinson, the general manager. How much of that would be guaranteed? And they got a middle number involved with that. And John gave up a little bit more than he wanted to, and Derrick took a little bit less than what he was asking for. And I think the same sort of thing will happen with Alvin. But the key there, when they're going to do that contract, and you're not hearing it, is the guaranteed part of that money. And it don't take a rocket scientist to figure out 3 quick names that have not seen the back end of that deal or those deals. And Freeman and Gurley were cut. They couldn't even move them in a trade, not even for a 7th-round pick. So they didn't want to deal with that contract. No, cut him loose. We'll do our own deal with him. Matt, it's part of the NFL game today, and I think Alvin and the Saints, I do believe, will come to a long-term deal.
Mike Detillier is with us. He's on Twitter at Mike Detillier. Mike, let me shift to what's happened in Baton Rouge. And we got, obviously, so much meat on the bone this week. We've got to get to all of it. We could do a full hour on any of these topics. But let's go to the 2 primary opt-outs with Ja'Marr Chase and Tyler Shelvin. Let's start with Ja'Marr. And maybe not even so much the decision, but the timing of the decision that was odd to so many. You?
Yeah, it was to me, too. I always think when you make that type of decision, it just isn't one thing. It's an accumulation of things that you're thinking about. No matter what you might think about, block out the outside noise, it's always there. It's always in your ear about it. And the dynamics of this. Ja'Marr Chase is a top 5 player in the 2021 draft. He is the top receiver today and will be in April. Where else can I go? And I think that was sort of the sales pitch maybe from people outside of LSU to say, hey, why are you coming back? You got no place to go. You know every year there's going to be 2 or 3 quarterbacks involved and a big lineman. You can dollars to donuts. That's going to happen in 2021 too. Where are you going to go? So it was a business decision, but I do think other factors got involved, and just the outside world and the swirl of the tornado that happens in today's 2020, because things change from day to day. And so I could understand his decision 100% about if there was any doubts. And I always sort of wondered, because when Micah Parsons and Greg Rousseau, they both announced fairly early in this process, boy, it ran it through my head, that there is no other linebacker rated ahead of Parsons. There is no other defensive end rated ahead of Rousseau. Man, Ja'Marr might think of that too. But he went through the process, and then everything else got thrown involved. And I do think the outside noises was the final probable straw of it to say, you know what, I want to play, but man, this is too risky at this point.
Mike, specifically at receiver, it feels like if there was a place where LSU, no one's going to replace Chase, obviously, but where LSU could absorb this, that's the spot. I mean, they've got enough talent and depth there to be plenty good enough this year. Would you agree?
Yeah, this is who I think it hurts the most, and that's Miles Brennan.
Oh, for sure.
Because on 3rd and 8, man, I'm looking for him.
Yeah.
I know he's going to get open, and you can rotate your coverage. When a guy is that good, you can rotate coverage to his side of the field. He's going to find a way to get open. And it was his big play ability and his skill set after the catch to make a big play that was amazing to watch. And he was just a tremendous football player. And I've told you this before, and others, that going into his final season, which I knew was going to be his final year, he is the highest graded wide receiver I've ever done at LSU.
Who would be second?
Well, it would be Odell.
Okay.
And Clayton's fairly close with that part, but it would be those two guys. Man, he was just a special talent, and so you miss that ability to move the chains, that you can count on him to be that guy. And also, he singled up Terrace Marshall and McMath and Eric Gilbert. Okay, you all of a sudden now, if you rotate coverage to his side of the field, then you got troubles on the other side. So Miles will miss that part, and especially red zone, because I think that's what last year LSU did unlike any other year I've ever seen. They took 3 points and made it 6.
Mm-hmm.
They scored touchdowns. They didn't kick field goals. They scored a touchdown, 6 points, bang, and then hit the extra point. So I do think that you're going to miss that. There is some depth there. So now if I'm playing LSU, it's real easy. I see Terrace Marshall Jr. out on the field. I'm going to rotate my coverage to his side of the field. It's going to give an opening, because I always think when these events happen, you got to seize the moment if you're a person, as an athlete or a player. The same way in business. If something happens and there's an opening, you have to seize that moment. You can't say, man, I'm going to do that in week 7. No, you got to do it now. It opens up a huge opportunity for Racey McMath, who, man, you talk about a 6'2.5", 225-pound receiver who arguably could outrun Jamar and Terrace. He's got that type of speed, and he's got a very aggressive running style. Well, he shoves that, he puts that arm out there and shoves it in your face real quickly. So I think it opens up things for him, but who it really, I think, will affect more is the tight end position. Eric Gilbert is special. You see it, that he is unique to LSU. They haven't had anybody like him, not in my lifetime. I haven't seen a 6'5.5", 250-pound guy that can run like what he can. And his entire life, he's always been double-teamed. So it'll be interesting to see how teams play him. But if you want a big receiver set with Marshall and Racey and Gilbert, then I'll put Cole Taylor at tight end. And I'll stick you to middle finger football-wise and say, okay, cover them. Cover them downfield. Have your choice now. Now, you got to be creative with it, because you're dealing with 2 freshman players here. But Trey Palmer has very little experience as a receiver. And then you talk about the 2 freshmen, and Coach has really talked up Coy Moore and Butte also. Both of them have talked him up quite a bit as guys that can help. But, Matt, you miss the experience. You miss that timing out on the field. You miss that ability that I've done it before, and I put the fear of football life in you with Jamar. That's what they're going to miss. Do you have talent? Yes, but you got a lot of young talent. So I think this kind of almost peels back to a couple years ago when they were playing a lot of young players at the receiving position, when Jamar, when Terrace came in. and sort of letting them kind of get a little bit of a feel for the game, how quickly it'll come. And now you got two freshman tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
Despite Gilbert, who I think is going to be an immediate impact player, and I think Cole's a really good football player too, you're also dealing with inexperience at those spots. And I think that's going to be the big key, especially with a young quarterback, and it's his first merry-go-round as the man. So it's going to be critical. And I didn't think about this in March and April, but it popped into my mind in doing an interview Sunday about Jamar, is that does LSU now, and last year it was tipped in throwing the football. Do they go back a little bit more and bring this almost to a 50-50 deal of running it? Well, because I know Curry, I know what he can do. I know what John Emery can do. I know what Tyron Davis-Price can do. And trying to get them the ball coming out the backfield, a little bit safer type of throw for Miles, even though I think that's the one thing he has to work on the most is some of that touch pass stuff of a running back or a wide receiver screen, because he threw everything sort of the same velocity, which was hard. If he's worked on that, but I do think that maybe you might say, let's call a running play here that we maybe would have threw the football a year ago. Let's run it with Chris, because Chris and Tyron are two thunderbacks, and Emery's the speed off the edge. So it was always going to look different than a year ago. It was because you can't match Burrow and Jefferson and Jamar and Marshall and Moss. You couldn't match that. But they would have a similar ring to it. I think this year you may see them run the football a little bit more than what they did a year ago, because you trust that until you get some timing down with the young receivers, especially early in games. I think they'll try to attack the deep part of the field more, because I think that plays into Miles. But I do think, too, taking time off the clock a little bit more. I think defenses, when you're going to come back, and you try tackling a 225-pound dude, and he's carrying that football that 15th, 17th, 19th time. Man, listen, you might have not a lot of fear in that first or second tackle. That dude doesn't run you over a few times. You're starting to think about that late in the third quarter. So I think you'll see it done a little different. Not a lot, but a little bit different, and more maybe toward the running game because of not having Jamar.
All right, Mike, clock no longer ticking on Tyler Shelvin. His LSU career is done. Let's dive into Shelvin's decision to leave right now.
It's the biggest surprise to me of any of the guys.
Interesting.
And God bless them. They gave us, Matt, the greatest season that you and I will ever see at LSU.
You're right.
I mean, Coach O might win another national championship, but he's not going to win it like he did last year. I mean, that was an unbelievable ride. So God bless him. And everybody's got different reasons for leaving. With Tyler, man, my biggest concern is, you and I have sort of joked about this, about getting on a scale. And unless you're 195 or between 195 and 200, you're not concerned about the first number. You know what that first number is. You're always concerned about the second one. Mm-hmm. We always knew the first number for Tyler was 3. Man, when that thing tipped 374, man, I'm not only concerned about him today, I'm concerned about his long-term situation, because he's fought this all his life. I didn't have that issue in my younger days. I do today. As you get older, you just, you fight it. And he's had a battle with it that's huge. Man, 374 is a lot of weight, and he's active now. He's practicing, he's working out, everything else. Man, God, I just worry about, I hope he makes the decision to find himself someone that can be a dietitian, that can kind of get him to get away and kind of stop a little bit, because, man, you're concerned about his long-term health as a person when you're that big. And like I said, he's practicing and he's working out, and he's 374.
Yeah.
Now, he is not assured of being a first-round pick. I've seen some of these mocks that have him going in the top. My thing is, there's no way some team's going to pull the trigger on him. At 370 pounds, you can't have it that in your reality. if you're really doing your job, that he would be that you're going to pick him that high. I think in shape, he's a second-round pick guy. So I don't look at him as a first-round pick player because here's the key. While Jamar, you knew all about, you know as much today about Jamar as you will next year at this time. He may training get a little bit quicker or faster, but you basically know the player. With Kerry, it wasn't a surprise knowing about his dad, the background there. And is Kerry going to get taller at LSU? Kerry's a 5'9", a little change corner, nickel guy who's played some dime safety. 2.5-year starter. You got a lot of film on Kerry. So, that one didn't come as a surprise to me either. But Tyler had so much that was sort of, today, what's your big question mark about him? His weight and his conditioning, right?
Yeah.
And isn't that going to be the question mark come next April? It's going to be the exact same thing. And, if I'm a GM, I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about his health. And can he keep his weight down? So that one surprised me because I knew the relationship between the two men, between Coach O and Tyler. I knew that, Ed really liked Tyler. And it was on the other side, too, man. Tyler just talked it up about Coach O. That one surprised me more than any of the others, that he would decide to opt out. And again, if you make that decision, God bless you. You made that choice, and we thank you for what you did last year. But it's more risky for Tyler than any of the other guys that have declared. Because I know what Kerry Vincent can do. I know what Jamar Chase can do. My concern is, man, if he's that big working out and training, I hope he understands he can't start training in December. Because that number may balloon on him weight-wise. And so, again, it's never one factor, but I always think that comes into play. Some outside noises get to you about certain things. And again, I've seen at least 6 or 7 mock drafts sent to me about Tyler Shelvin being a top 20 player. Now, if he was 325 pounds, he's in there for me.
Yeah.
But he's not. I mean,
what if he gets there? What if he gets there by? Sorry to interrupt, Mike. What if he gets there by February, March?
Then I would redo it.
Okay.
then my thinking's changed. But I got to evaluate Tyler Shelvin for what I see today.
Yeah.
And that's a 370-pound man out there. And again, Matt, I think even if he would get to 3, and I know O has said, the best weight for him would be around 330. And I think he was being generous with that 330. If he would get to 330, I think you would have some people's minds changed that, okay, maybe he's found a way. But, they're going to have some people that are saying, wait a minute, he just got his weight down for the draft, and he's going to balloon right back up. Because when you're a big guy, you can start to see it in one way, how they walk. And watch that big man. I'll never forget Mount Cody. Remember when Mount Cody played for Alabama?
Absolutely.
He walked like Fred Sanford, like you could take a barrel and throw it between his legs, and it would never touch his knees. Watch a big man. No, I ain't kidding you. You watch, and like Refrigerator Perry and those type of guys that are that huge that you know why they walk that way is because, not to get into health-wise, but, man, all that front is pulling on your back and your hip, and it affects your walking, that you sort of become bow-legged. Even if you're not bow-legged before, you bow-legged afterwards, because it affects your walk and your run and your gait and that sort of thing. So, man, listen, I just hope for him, whoever he is connected to, will get him someone to work with him on getting his weight down, because that, to me, not only short-term but long-term, for him is going to be a battle all of his life, because I think it's been like that his entire life now, that he's battled that particular, and O's advice, don't put rice in the gumbo. Okay, well, how long does that last? If you're eating six big bowls of gumbo, that rice is, I guess, that sort of thing works. But you are concerned about his health. But Matt, I'll be honest. When I first got wind of that one surprised me because I knew the relationship between the two guys and how much really kind of was pushing him, backing him, and the relationship between the two were very, very good. And again, you never know what's the final straw with it, but that one surprised me more than any other players that opted out.
All right, Mike D, we're going to dive right into a ton of questions.
Matt.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can I cut you just for a second?
Hey,
I've had a guy that he's
cut me off anytime, Mike.
No. I don't
serious.
want to cut you off. I just kind of intervene a little bit. But a gentleman from Shreveport, Mr. Joy, and he's a regular listener, so he told me, man, you tops with him. But he asked me about Darren. He told me about asked me about Darren Evans, who is in the transfer portal. LSU has offered, along with Ole Miss and Texas Tech and Baylor and everybody else, and asking me about him as a player. I scouted Darren when he was at Glen Oaks, and I've watched him for 2.5 years as a starter at Nicholls State. Mm-hmm. He's a 6'2" plus corner. Long arm. Man, listen, I got a couple Eagles that got spooked from the storm, and he's got a wingspan like those guys. I mean, man, he spreads that out, and he can get to footballs a lot of guys can't get to. Now, here's been the confusion because I think a couple people have wrote this in that he has played the nickel corner. He has not played nickel corner at Nicholls.
Okay.
He's always been an edge corner. He has not played in the nickel. Not saying he can't, but he hasn't. He's been strictly an edge guy. Rebo's out there, hey, listen, cover the best guy and cover him one-on-one. And so that's been Darren, and he has not played on special teams.
Okay.
So just to clear that up, because I think some people maybe just assumed by the way Ed was talking maybe that he was going to get a nickel guy that could play some special teams. Well, if it's Evans, he's never played special teams at Nicholls, and he has never played as a nickel corner. He's always been an edge guy, but a 6'2" guy who was a really good track athlete at Glen Oaks. He ran the 400 meters, and he's got some speed. He can go one-on-one with defenders, sort of rail thin, because, they list him at 180. Man, I don't want to get on that scale. Then I think he's in the 170s, but listen, we'll call it 180. That's close enough. But he is a really good player, and along with Dixon, the receiver, he was the two guys that I've told scouts at Nicholls that I think can play at the next level. Darren Evans can play at the next level, but he's a 6'2" plus corner, long arm, excellent speed, but he's been a strictly edge corner at Nicholls State. He has not played in the nickel, and he has not played on special teams. Okay. Just to clarify that, because Mr. Joy actually sent me a couple of articles that said he played in the nickel and on special teams, and he never did.
Okay. Well, good info, Mike. Appreciate it. Thanks to Mr. Joey for watching up in Shreveport. We appreciate it, man. Throw that Hester kid to the curb and check us out. I'm kidding. All right, Mike, let's get to questions. Kevin Monjur asked Mike, with it being a contract year for Marcus Williams and Demario Davis, who are the Saints more likely to let walk?
They ain't letting Davis walk.
No doubt.
No, come on, listen, Demario, other than Drew Brees, he's been the second best veteran free agent pickup this team has had. He's your leader on defense, and he's a guy that can do just so many things, coverage-wise, against the run, when you use him as a blitzer. And I think that they've had some discussion with Demario about doing a new deal with him, but man, he'd be difficult to replace.
Yeah. Ask Mike, why didn't the Saints sign Leonard Fournette? That's James Fortenberry with the question.
I think, listen, they got enough issues trying to deal with Kamara. Because where would you get value if you sign Leonard? The other team's got you by the teriyaki. They ain't giving up much for Kamara now. Mm-hmm. So if you did that, you basically telegraphing, okay, we're going to give him away, but we got to trade him for a cheaper price. So all that was posturing on both sides. And so you saw a little bit of football chess being played on both sides, but Kamara's the perfect fit for what Sean wants offensively. Now, Leonard's gotten better as a receiver, but I just think he much preferred Kamara.
Ask Mike, we got literally 60 seconds left. Why not let Kamara play out this year, tag him, and see what you really need to spend?
No, I think a lot of people felt that way before, but, if you're the player, you want a little bit of security.
Sure.
And I think he's a guy that Sean Payton considers to be essential personnel for his football team, and he wants him long term.
Mike Detillier, let's think. Are the Jags tanking for Trevor Lawrence, Slade Johnson?
You better. I don't care what they say. You know damn well they are.
Mike Detillier, SaintsReport.com, MikeDetillier.com, Saints News Network over at SI.com. With us every Thursday. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Mike Detillier. You're the man, Mike. We appreciate you as always, man.
Thank you, Matthew.
All right, be well. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.